So you're under an award and you have a valid ongoing workers' compensation case. You're getting your weekly checks every week. You've been going through your medical treatment, and recently you've had a functional capacity exam to determine what you can and can't do. In conjunction with your doctor, it's been found that you have permanent work restrictions. In your case, let's say no lifting over 20 pounds, no bending, no stooping, no crouching. So you can return to work, you just can't return to the job that you had before you got hurt. And these are your permanent restrictions. So you're going to continue to get your checks because of that, because you are under, in Virginia, you're under an award, and in North Carolina, you would be under an accepted claim. So maybe they've even terminated you from your old job because you've been out too long. Now, you or your attorney get this call from someone who identifies themselves as a vocational rehabilitation expert. And they want to meet with you, and they ask you to call them back, or they call your attorney and ask for a call back. What the heck is going on? Who is this person? Should I trust them? How should I act with them? Should I even speak with them? So I'm Joe Miller, workers' compensation attorney here in Virginia and in North Carolina. And we're here to talk today a little bit about the whole idea of vocational rehabilitation and the whole vocational rehabilitation process. So, you know, there's a lot of therapists that you go to. Sometimes in workers' comp, you deal with physical therapists, you might deal with an occupational therapist, but these are all folks that you're referred to, you know, as part of your medical treatment plan. Your treating physician says, okay, I want you to go into physical therapy. And so you start physical therapy, or, you know, you come out of the hospital and you got to go through some occupational therapy, you deal with that. There's all kinds of therapists. Vocational rehabilitation is very different from those kind of things in a number of ways. First of all, doctors are generally not going to refer you to vocational rehabilitation. This is someone, the vocational rehabilitation counselor or expert, is typically a certified person who's got degrees in certain, occupational, they know the labor market. And in the best of worlds, their job is to actually to find you work, to get you back into the labor market, since you can't go back to what you were doing before. And that's, of course, in consideration of your work restrictions. The big difference, though, is they are hired directly by the insurance company. In other words, they work directly for the insurance company. So what does that mean? It's going to mean a lot of things. What it really means is that, for the most part, they're really not working in your favor at all. Their primary purpose, and I'll say this several times during the course of this, is really to minimize your case as much as they can. How do they do that? Well, really, there's two different ways the voc rehab people, and I'll use that term a lot, I'll just call it voc rehab for short, or I might say the VRC, vocational rehabilitation counselor. The vocational rehabilitation counselor, the voc rehab person, is really part of what I've called in another video an unholy trinity of three defense professionals who are there to try to mess you up. Number one is the insurance adjuster. Okay, if there's not an attorney in the case, even if there is an attorney, the insurance adjuster is the one that works for the insurance company directly and is working on the claim. They're the one that's really pulling the strings here. Okay, and the first string that they pull is the second professional, who's called the nurse case manager, and their job really is supposed to be a liaison between the insurance company and your doctors and to try to help coordinate your care. And a lot of them do that pretty well. But the other thing they're going to be trying to do, the nurse case manager, which we've talked about in other videos, is to get you back to work as quickly as possible, to get your restrictions minimized and get you back into some kind of work as quickly as possible. Hey, doc, this guy, you're saying he can't work. He could really lift 5 pounds, couldn't he? Couldn't he lift 5? Can you just put that down instead of not working, that he could lift 5 pounds? I mean, who's going to work somewhere you can't lift 5 pounds if you've never worked outside of the labor industry? But I've seen doctors do that only because the nurse case manager urges them to do it. So that's the nurse case manager. The other person that is, their strings are being pulled by the adjuster, is the voc rehab counselor. Okay? The bottom line is, why are they pulling their strings? Because they want to, bottom line, what they're trying to do is get you cut off of checks, or to minimize the amount of checks you are being paid every week. Because what they're trying to do the insurance company, the adjuster's goal is to minimize what's called their exposure. Okay, exposure means how much money they have to pay out. And as you may know, as we talked about in some other videos, or maybe you've read on our website, unless you have a permanent and total injury, you are entitled up to 500 weeks of workers' compensation payments. Okay, that's your weekly, 2/3 of your average weekly wage every week for up to 500 weeks, unless and until you return to work, either in your pre-injury job or some other job, okay, that pays the same or more. Usually, you're going to see these voc rehab folks appear, as I mentioned at the beginning, once you've reached maximum medical improvement and once a functional capacity has been, exam has been performed, meaning that your permanent restrictions have been determined, okay? And oftentimes, this is also when we're going to be in negotiations on your claim to try to get it settled. So sometimes they're going to use this as a tool to try to put some pressure on you to settle. Their job really is, as I said before, really to look at your restrictions, look at what's available in the job market, and try to find you a job. Now, they're going to try to tell you when they meet with you that they're going to try to help you find new employment. But the reality is that this experience with a voc rehab counselor is really not very pleasant, because they're not going to really be looking for any jobs that you're interested in, that's for sure. And a lot of times they're relatively low-paying jobs. And again, the only reason they're involved in the case is really not to help you. They're trying to minimize the exposure of the insurance company. And how do they do this? They do this with a two-pronged approach. Okay? The first approach is what I just mentioned. Try to reduce the obligation or minimize or eliminate the obligation of the employer to pay you your weekly checks by getting you a job. Okay? It may not be a job you like, but find you a job. Okay? That's the first method. Method number two is simply to trip you up, to make it so that through maybe manipulation of the meeting dates, or maybe you're just forgetting about the meeting dates, maybe they're not being real clear with you, or a number of other little tricks that they sometimes pull, you are going to be out of compliance with vocational rehabilitation, meaning they've got a plan for you, you didn't follow the plan, and therefore they're going to cut you off of your checks completely. And once that happens, on the day that voc rehab counsel determines that you're out of compliance, in Virginia, your checks will stop. Okay, and it's not so easy to get them back. In fact, it's very difficult to get them back going again. So you don't really want to put them in a position where they have an argument that you're not complying with the plan. And believe me, they're going to try very hard to put you in that position. Mostly it's by annoying you, to try to get you to walk out of the meetings or what have you. So you got to be ready for this. So how does this all start out? As I said, they're going to contact you or your attorney if you have one, and you really have 10 days to get back with them. And you're going to be working pretty much directly with them. There is usually an initial meeting. If I'm involved in the case, I'm going to appear with you at that initial meeting with the vocational rehabilitation person. Your job is to get along with that counselor as much as you can and try to follow their instructions as much as you can. Now, sometimes, as I've said before, some of these voc rehab counselors can be kind of inappropriate and really do things that are not really appropriate at all and try to aggravate you. The good news is that there are guidelines, and they are published. You can find them on the Virginia Workers' Compensation Commission website, and they're called the VRC guidelines. So when you're involved in this relationship, we're looking behind her or him to make sure they're doing the right thing. I'll give you a couple of quick examples of some stuff that's in there. And also, North Carolina has similar rules. What the vocational rehabilitation counselor's job entails is to pre-screen jobs for you. In other words, they got to be within your restrictions, and they got to be available jobs that you could do, conceivably, even maybe with a little bit of training, but you could do them. So if they're sending you jobs that are not pre-screened, that they haven't even looked at or not available, that's wrong, and they can't be doing that. Another thing they can't do is just say, well, I want you to go start looking in the newspaper. I want you to go down to the Virginia Employment Commission and start looking at jobs, and you got to go do that right now. Okay, they can't do that. Okay, they have to do the work and give you the leads for you to go call these folks or contact these folks and apply, these potential employers, and apply for these positions. And they have to be pre-screened positions, and they have to be appropriate for you. Okay, and if they are not doing that, they're not doing their job. We can call them out on it. In some cases, get them ejected from the case. Another example, I've actually seen voc rehab counselors tell my clients, do not tell if you're going for an interview, don't tell them you've been hurt on the job. Don't tell them anything about your injury. Don't tell them anything about your restrictions. They are not allowed to do that. Okay, specifically it says in the guidelines, they can't tell you not to mention your injuries. Doesn't mean you walk into an interview and the first thing you say is, I got hurt on the job, I don't know if I can work here. You shouldn't do that, because that goes to some of your obligations, which is one of which is you're not allowed to sabotage any job interviews you may have, even if it's a job you don't like. You walk in there and start cussing and acting like a crazy man or woman, or saying, hey, I got hurt on the job, I don't think I can do this, or let's say you never use a cane and you walk in with a cane, or just some crazy stuff like that. That's going to get you out of compliance immediately. Okay, so when you work with the Voc Rehab counselor, what is it that you need to do to stay in compliance? Again, the main thing is just to cooperate with them to the extent you can. Yes, it's extremely annoying, and we have clients complain to us all the time. They're going to be sending you all these job leads, they're jobs you really don't want. But you have to do it. You have to do what they ask you to do, as long as it's reasonable. And what's reasonable? It's a pretty broad definition. Can they ask you to look for 20 to 40 jobs a week? Yes, because if you break it down, 5 days a week, that's 8 jobs a day. It's 8 calls a day, 8 applications. It's really not too unreasonable. So yeah, they can require a lot. So after this initial meeting, we're going to have an initial meeting first. And the initial meeting is going to be, if I'm involved, like I said, your attorney, and they're going to go over your entire work history with you. They're going to go back over the years you've been employed and all that, and go over and also it's important that, they are aware of your work restrictions. If you have an attorney, make sure they have that. If you have a functional capacity exam, you want to make sure they've got a copy of that, because that's going to show what your work restrictions are. But they're going to go over your entire work history. They want to see what kind of transferable skills you have to be able to get a different job. Okay, transferable skills from the stuff that you've done before into new employment. It's going to work out different ways. They may say at the end of the meeting, all right, I'm going to go back and I'm going to write up my report, and we're going to see what happens. Sometimes your restrictions may be so severe. Let's say you're restricted to a sedentary job and you can only work a few hours a day or something like that. They may come back and say, I don't think you're a candidate for vocational rehabilitation. That doesn't happen too often. As I've said before, the workers' compensation insurance company is paying for it's on their nickel. They're paying for all of this. And as long as you cooperate with the Voc Rehab person, you should continue to receive your weekly checks. They're going to seek to terminate benefits, okay, the second you don't cooperate. And if they find you new work, if they do find you a job that pays you at or more of what you were making pre-injury, you're going to be cut off that way too, because you're making money now, in your new job. Now, let's assume that they find you a job that pays less. In that circumstance, it's called temporary partial disability. Once you're out, when you're out and she's looking for a job for you, the Voc Rehab person, and you're still getting your checks, that's called temporary total disability, because right now you're getting paid 2/3 of your average weekly wage. But what happens if she finds you a job making less? In that circumstance, you're still entitled to some money, and that money would be 2/3 of the difference between the new job and your pre-injury job average weekly wage. So let's take an example. You were making, before your accident, you were making $1,000 a week. Okay, let's say you were making $1,000 a week, and so that means that your temporary total disability rate is 2/3 of that, $666.67. That is your weekly check that you can be getting from workers' comp. The vocational rehabilitation counselor finds you a job paying you $400 a week. So what happens then? So the difference between your pre-injury job and the new job is $600. 1,000 minus 400 is 600. You're entitled to 2/3 of the difference. 2/3 of $600 is $400, right? So that means you're going to get your weekly check, your weekly payments from your new job at $400 a week, I guess minus taxes and stuff, plus your $400 in temporary partial disability. Okay, so you're still going to get, you're going to get some money from workers' comp, even though you have a new job that pays less. Your job is to play the game, okay? Because really, at the end of the day, it's a game, it's a dance, because you want to say so badly to them, can you just jump out and say, look, I know this whole thing's a charade. I know it's a farce. I know you're here working for the insurance company, and you're really not going to get me anything I want. This is BS, and I don't want. You can't say that, okay? Everybody knows it's true, but you can't say it. It's a dance, okay? The dance is you do what she asks you to do, and she plays the game and does her little thing. Maybe she'll find you a job. In most cases, she won't. And you just keep going on with this, and hopefully at some point, one of you will outlast the other. Um, you know, the question is, how long is it going to be before you can't tolerate dealing with this person anymore? Hopefully, never. You're going to continue to tolerate dealing with it because you have to, because if you want to keep getting your checks, if you want to eventually have a decent settlement on your claim. Because if you get cut off, you can forget about the value of your claim is going to go down the tubes. How long can they continue to keep you in this vocational rehabilitation? And the answer is, unfortunately, as long as they want to. If they want to do it for the entirety of the 500 weeks, although I've never seen that, they could do that conceivably. I recently settled a case where they had this person in voc rehab for almost 2 years. So that means this person had to deal with her for just shy of 100 meetings, had to go to with this person. And it was hard, but I think eventually, and they didn't find him a job, by the way, they never found him anything. So, eventually, I think the insurance company realized this was not going to work, and we were able to settle the case. My advice to you is not to give in. Stick it out, show them what you're made of, and just play the game. And most cases, depending on your restrictions and how high your pre-injury wage was, in a lot of cases, especially like I said, if you have a high pre-injury wage, they're not going to make much of a dent in what you've got going on as far as your checks, and hopefully eventually you're going to get a good settlement. So, and if they get out of line and they don't behave properly and follow the rules like they're supposed to, we're going to call them out on it, and if necessary, we'll make a motion to get them ejected from the claim. Okay? So listen, I hope I've explained vocational rehabilitation to you. I've tried to give it a pretty good summary here. I hope it makes sense to you. If you have any questions about voc rehab or any other aspect of workers' compensation in either Virginia or North Carolina, please don't hesitate to call us. My name is Joe Miller, workers' compensation attorney. God have a blessed day. Joe Miller out.